Welcome to Punky's Pro Wrestling. This is awesome. Monday's Raw was dedicated to AJ Styles, I guess. And so at the end, he comes out and he's gonna, and he talks to his family who was there. It took place in Atlanta. And of course, he's from Gainesville, and he said just 25 minutes away. And excuse me. He introduces his family who is sitting there, and his oldest son, AJ, wasn't there because he was at home with the flu. Prayers for AJ to get better. I'm sure he'll bounce back pretty quick. He's young and healthy. His retirement speech was very emotional. He was in tears. His wife was in tears. And he said the tears aren't sadness. And he said she was the best wife in the world, the best mother in the world, that he's watched his kids grow over FaceTime, and it was time. And he put his jacket, he laid out his jacket in the middle of the ring, put his gloves in the ring, and said the reason he didn't do it at the Royal Rumble was because he wanted to do it at home. And The Undertaker came out on his bicycle, and bicycle, oh my God. I can feel him slapping me. Motorcycle. And he stepped in the ring, and AJ's kind of looking at him. And he said, have you ever heard the saying, you see me coming, you're already gone? And AJ's kind of looking at him. And he said, well, I'm going to change it. When you see me coming, you know you're going. And huh? And he said, it is my esteemed honor to tell you that you are the next inductee in the WWE Hall of Fame. AJ will be inducted next month. Yeah! Which means John Cena will probably go in next year. Because they're not going to have two big names like that in 1 year. Then there was a point where there were a bunch of wrestlers in the ring, all saying goodbye to AJ and thanking him. And I wrote down the names that I could remember. These top two I'll come back to after. Adam Pearce, the GM of Raw. One of the Tongas. Damian Priest, Kofi Kingston, CM Punk, Rhea Ripley, Natty, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, the lady announcer, the African-American lady announcer with the funky hair. I really like her, but why can't I remember her name? Lillian Garcia, 2 referees, several others that I wasn't sure who they were, and 2, to me, the most special ones that were in the ring with him, besides Gallows and Anderson, were Abyss and Frankie Kazarian. I saw Abyss and I about cried. And then I saw Frankie and I was so close. I saw Abyss first, because Abyss was standing off to his left and he had his Abyss mask on, even though he's not Abyss anymore. He goes by his real name. He works backstage as a producer and stuff. So he doesn't go by Abyss. But because of the situation, he came out as Abyss. And they hugged and they cried, and Abyss told him how much he loved him. And I mean, they've known each other for a couple of decades. I've got to see what Abyss's name is. That's driving me crazy because I know what it is and I can't think of it. Pretty sure it's Chris, but because he started using his name in TNA when he did the thing where he'd go back and forth between his name and Abyss. 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 Okay. Joseph Park. Okay. But he was out in his Abyss mask. Okay, so Joseph Park. I think he used Chris Park at one time. That's what I was thinking. It's Joseph Park, which is what he goes by now because he works backstage. He worked backstage in TNA for a while, and then WWE must have offered him a better deal. Frankie Kazarian, because they have an agreement with TNA, was able to be there. I'm glad that even though I don't think Anderson and Gallows are working there anymore, they were allowed to be there. But just seeing him with Frankie, and they were hugging and talking, and the tears, and he said something to Frankie, and Frankie said, soon. He said something else, and then soon again. So I don't know if Frankie's planning to retire soon or what that was about, because I couldn't get the whole conversation. And Natty talked to him about, because I know that AJ from early on did a lot of training with the females. In WWE, he trained females. He trained females in TNA when he first came into TNA because they felt comfortable with him because he was a gentleman, and they never minded training with him. So he often helped train females. So I think Natty was talking about a training session with some of the girls. It's something he did, and she was saying, he would say, do this or something like that. And she was smiling, but it was like a pushing type thing that she was describing. Again, I wish I could have heard more of the conversations. I heard a lot of I love you, man, the hugs. Him and Frankie kissed each other on the cheek, which is not a surprise. They're best friends. They have been for over 2 decades. They held each other's faces and talked, and it was very emotional. Almost, that was pretty emotional too, because he helped train Omos and get him to where he is. You know, that's why Omos was put with him. He was, as Dusty Rhodes would have called it, a puppy with big paws. He had to grow into himself. He was so big and strong and had a presence, but needed to grow into himself. So it was what Dusty used to call a puppy with big paws. A rookie with a lot of potential who needed growth. And Rhea Ripley was crying. CM Punk was just, a couple of the guys, Omos and another guy, had him up on his on their shoulders. Damian Priest was there thanking him, and you know, because I know he helped a lot of these people. And there were other people there, like I said, that I didn't recognize. But it was nice to see Abyss. I spelled it wrong. There. So, and the lady announcers and the referees, you know. I think one of the referees was probably originally a TNA referee, because they do have one that's been reffing. I think one of them was probably, I can't remember his name, but he was from back in Cornelia, Georgia, and wrestled a little bit in TNA, but basically refereed for TNA. And I think that was one of the refs that was in the ring. I didn't recognize him as such, but I believe that to be the case. And he kind of said, hey, man, you know, more or less, what about me? You know, without saying it, because he's standing in front of him. He goes, so I think that's who that was, and I can't remember his name. Shoot. But I'm pretty sure that's who that was. Shoot. Anyway, but he's been reffing for a zillion years since then. Always kept himself in good shape, even as a ref. There was another ref. I didn't know who that ref was either, but those two particular refs must have been important to him to be in the ring there. And just like I said, a bunch of other wrestlers. The Tongas obviously are important to him because he worked with them in Japan with Gallows and Anderson. Oh gosh. I don't know if it was Tonga Loa or Tama Tonga. Unfortunately, I don't follow it as closely as I once did. I do still like to watch the pay-per-views, and I have my favorites like Rhea Ripley. She's my favorite. I'm trying to think of what guys are my favorites these days. Frankie, obviously, but you don't get to see him. I was hoping he'd be in the Royal Rumble. I knew he wouldn't win it, but I was hoping that they would put him in it from TNA. You know what I mean? And he could have been saying that they would be getting together soon. When he said soon, they might not have been talking about Frankie's retirement. Like I said, it was very difficult to hear with all the people, all the cheering, all of that stuff. It was hard to hear. Um, okay. Hey, I just wanted to give you a proper ending to the video. um, Thank you for joining me here in Punky's Pro Wrestling. Congratulations to the phenomenal one. Um, I know he's planning on working for the company in a non-wrestling role, so we'll probably see him. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe. And I will see you next week. Please subscribe. We are at 30. We're trying to get to 50. We can do this, especially as we post videos more often, which is my goal, at least once a week. So, have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. God bless you, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Please subscribe.